Good evening and welcome to another Johnny Cleveland podcast. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a wonderful Wednesday evening here. We are coming to you from the Buckeye State, Central Ohio. I'm in the Columbus, Ohio area. It's good to have you along on our podcast tonight. We are the Johnny Cleveland podcast, and it's been a couple weeks since we had an actual podcast. Actually, I'm excited. We're starting a new, working with a new host platform that is going to be producing our, helping produce our podcast. They are called The District, and they're Listen Media. They're going to be connected to a couple websites that you might be familiar with. One of them is clevelandscene.com up there in the Cleveland area. And there's also another website called the kcpitch.com. They're out of Kansas City. And those many different podcasts in the local area will be kind of part of this group that will be coming out with their podcasts. And so you can link to my podcast, other podcasts from local area folks who are doing shows here in the Ohio region. If you're in the Kansas City region, for example, you would be able to find podcasts related to the Kansas City area. But anyway, it's very exciting. I'm really looking forward to being part of that and moving forward through the summer and making this podcast even better, much more exciting for your entertainment. And so hope everyone's had a couple good weeks since I last talked to everybody. It's again, we are coming to you on a June 9th already. June 9th. It's hard to believe that we have already almost made it halfway through June. And today here in the Columbus area, it's been kind of a dreary, overcast, rainy day once again. But hopefully the sun will come out tomorrow. It's been just enormously yucky, that sort of humid part of Ohio this time of year that just really stinks. Living in Kansas for the last 25 years prior, got used to the dry heat, the hot heat of Kansas in that part of the region. So coming back to Ohio, having grown up here, I didn't really miss all the humidities, but we certainly have had our share of humidity this week. And so we've been taking advantage of the air conditioning here. Thank God we do have air conditioning. So lots of things going on in the world of sports, especially here in the Cleveland area. Right now, the Cleveland Indians are battling the St. Louis Cardinals. The Cleveland Indians got off to a good start. They actually won the game last night, 10-1, had a great game. Shane Bieber, our ace pitcher, did a very nice job, won the game, went 6 innings strong, and took the win, so he improved to 7-3 on the season. Tonight, unfortunately, the Indians did get off to a pretty good start. They got up 2-0 early on in the game, and they had their kind of one of their relievers come in, Sean Carlos Maya, who they brought up from the minor leagues recently. He had pitched a couple days ago over in Baltimore, had him start this game as well. He unfortunately did not make it out of the first inning against the Cardinals, and the Cardinals scored 4 runs. And so currently I'm watching the score right now. They're in the second inning. The Cardinals are up. Cardinals are winning 4-2. So we'll see if the Indians can get any more offense generated and come back and win. But unfortunately, the Indians have already had to go to their bullpen, and that's not a good sign, folks. And we all know that. So the Indians right now are not doing too badly. They are 32-26 on the season. They're 3 or 4 games back of the Chicago White Sox. And, for what it's worth, I think that the Indians are pretty much where they should be. They had a string of wins early on in the year that surprised a lot of folks. And since that point, they've been winning some, losing some. Unfortunately, they've been losing to a couple teams like the Baltimore Orioles this past weekend that, quite honestly, they shouldn't be losing to based on just records. Baltimore has a very poor record. St. Louis today, for example, actually has a pretty decent record, but they have lost, I believe, 7 games in a row after they lost to the Indians last night. So they are due for a win. The Cardinals are. So can the Indians come back? I'm not sure. It's again 4-2. I think they're going to the top of the third. So we'll see what happens with the Tri. But we're June 9th. We're not doing too bad, and certainly going to have a long summer. It's just nice to have people back in the ballpark. Today I had a chance to go down to the bowling alley here locally. And I've talked little bit about my son, Grant Man. My other son, Alec, is back too in the area. He's, the graduate from Hope College. And we went down to the bowling alley today. And I'm telling you, that bowling alley was packed. I have not seen the bowling alley that crowded in 2 years since pre-pandemic. And it was nice to see lots of folks there bowling with their families. And actually ran into a family that was bowling next to us. One of the kids in the family was wearing a K-State T-shirt. Yes, you folks out there in Kansas, those of you who follow the show know that I lived in Kansas for many years, and that the K-State Wildcats, Kansas State out there. And yes, that family that was next to me actually did live in Kansas. They were telling me their little story, and the mom was from Topeka, the dad was from Salina, and their kids actually, then they moved to Ohio. So they were visiting their grandkids. So it's kind of a nice story. You don't see too many K-State T-shirts here in the state of Ohio. So it was nice to run into some Kansans. All right. So Indians doing decently. Let's talk a little bit about the Cleveland Cavaliers. Yes, they're not playing right now. But if you do follow the show, you do know that I do contribute my writings to a couple different got the King James Gospel, and we write all about Cleveland Cavalier basketball. It's been a lot of fun to contribute to that. I wrote an article this past week about some draft picks for the upcoming draft for the Cleveland Cavs. I'm not quite sure where they're going to draft. Probably they can draft anywhere between 1 and probably 10, based on the lottery and their chances of getting the number 1 pick. It's more likely they'll probably draft anywhere between, let's say, 4 and probably 7 or 8. And with that in mind, I wrote an article about this kid out of Florida State named Scotty Barnes. If you get a chance to go back and read my stuff, you can go on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @JohnSuchan, JohnSuchan. You can also follow me on my Twitter handle for the podcast, which is the J Cleveland Pod. If you follow me at the John Suchan point there, you can read my article about Scotty Barnes. And I just love this kid. This kid's coming out of Florida State. He had 1 year he played as a freshman down in Florida State, 6'9", 270 long. If you go watch some film on this kid, he just has a lot that he obviously he'll do well at. He's long and lengthy. He's quick. Especially on the defensive side of things. His lateral movement with his footwork is great. I love defense. And I talked in my article about how I still believe that defense wins games. I know defense isn't fun, and more people are entertained by the offensive side of the ball. But this kid really knows how to play defense. He seems to enjoy it. And the Cleveland Cavaliers need some kids who can come in and play defense. Now, will he be available? I'm telling you, if he's available, kid 6'9", can play the floor. He actually brought the ball up on point many times for the Florida Seminoles, play point on defense. He can play pretty much anywhere 1 through 4 on the floor, and he's going to get better. Obviously, his offensive stats are not off the charts. I think he averaged just about 10 points. Didn't shoot a lot during the season. His free throw shooting percentage was pretty poor at 60%. His shooting from the field was pretty poor as well. He doesn't really have a great outside shot. He did hit a couple 3-pointers, but that's not his game. His game right now is defense, and if he can focus on that part of his game, and he gets drafted by a team like Cleveland, I think he'll have a big role with them early. Cleveland's got to turn it around. I do think that the Cavs are going to need to look for some other free agents. I heard CJ McCollum might be out there in Portland. We keep hearing about Kevin Love, the Cleveland Cavalier forward who's been here with us, and that big contract. And what are we going to do with that contract? And is he going to stay in Cleveland? And he's from, I think, the Portland area originally. They talked about him going back to Portland. Would the Cavs send him that way and have somebody like CJ McCollum, who's actually from this area, come back? We'll see. It's something to consider. Cleveland needs to shake it up a little bit. I like the core of the team: Colin Sexton, Darius Garland, Jarrett Allen. I love Dean Wade. Dean Wade, that kid from K-State from Kansas. Love that. Love Dean Wade. I think he knows how to play the game. He knows that defense is important, and he plays hard. So look forward to seeing what the Cavs do. Look for more writings from me on the King James Gospel. I also write for the Dog Pound Daily. And, the Browns are this last week or two have been starting back with OTAs. And those OTAs are voluntary. So those are activities that the players, they actually negotiated with the NFL, the players union, that these OTAs, they're not required, they're voluntary. And I wrote an article originally about, the article I wrote most recently in Dog Pound Daily was about Kevin Stefanski. And I've talked about Kevin Stefanski on this podcast quite a bit. I've written about him on various articles too on Dog Pound Daily. I also write for ClevelandSportsTalk.com. Check us out there. Wrote an article that we're going to talk about here in a minute on that website. But in the article I talked about with Kevin Stefanski, I talked about where, the Browns are back with these OTAs. And a lot of local media, especially, have been harping, trying to get Stefanski to break and suggest that because some of their star offensive players, like a Baker Mayfield, like a Jarvis Landry, like a Odell Beckham, like most of the receivers and Baker, aren't there on the offensive side of the ball practicing with their teammates, that for some reason that this is going to hinder their opportunity come next winter, December, January, at getting to the Super Bowl. And some of the local folks have said, well, the Kansas City Chiefs have all been there, and they're heads and shoulders above the Cleveland Browns. And, they've tried to rattle Stefanski with those questions. And Stefanski, to his credit and his character, has continually talked about living in the moment, being in the moment, doing whatever they can with whoever they have. They're not looking further ahead than a day or a week. They, during the season this past year, Stefanski focused with the team on playing for that week. Don't look too far ahead. Just look forward to that next opponent that current week. And they can only control what they can control. And he talked a lot about in the previous post, when they had a press conference last week after some of the OTAs in week one, that that the coaching staff, the players, have to be flexible. Folks, we've been through this pandemic this last 18 months, and everyone, including you, including me, has learned how to be more flexible and adaptable because we've been isolated and learned how to use things like Zoom, and these players have learned how to use Zoom. And the Browns ended up going 11-5. Did you forget that? Those folks up there in Cleveland who like to put a lot of pressure on Stefanski because they're trying to get a headline and a story, seem to forget that the Browns have a very good opportunity to get back. And I don't think, like I mentioned in the article, that the Kansas City Chiefs players are standing around their locker room or the water cooler going, oh my gosh. The Browns players, are not meeting all together for OTAs. Man, we've got one up on them. My gosh, they are not doing that at all. Instead, yeah, sure, I would love for Baker to be there on OTAs, but there are a lot of players, a lot of teams that don't have their stars at these voluntary, which was built into the bargaining agreement with the NFL players. They're not there, okay? Not just with the Browns, but other teams like the Minnesota Vikings, okay? Or like the New England Patriots. There are various players from those teams that are not there for those voluntary activities. Now, Baker Mayfield is down there in Austin, Texas, his hometown, and guess who's down there with him? Most of the offensive players, Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham, many of the other receivers, Hollywood Higgins, they are down there working together as an offensive unit. No, they're not in Berea up in Cleveland. Yes, I wish they were, but it's voluntary. Now, the Browns have a required mini camp coming up. I believe it starts next week, maybe the week after. And I am guaranteeing you right here on the Johnny Cleveland podcast. Yet, yes, Baker Mayfield and the boys will all be back in Berea because it's a required activity for the Browns. And them missing this time for OTAs is not going to prevent the Browns from winning a Super Bowl. Now, folks, they haven't won a Super Bowl yet, but I have a lot of confidence in Kevin Stefanski, and I think you do too. He is a man of character. He is really buying in. These players have bought into his system last year, and I certainly don't think that that's going to change anytime soon. I hear some people right now during the off season who are a little bit nervous. They say, I'm afraid Baker is going to regress. Folks, Baker is not going to regress. Okay, yes. After Baker's rookie year in 2018, he regressed. Why did he regress? Well, you know the answer as well as I do. The coach. Okay? He was not coached well. He had a coach named Freddie Kitchens, who some folks the previous year had thought, okay, well, the kid had a pretty good connection with Coach Kitchens. Well, we found out during that season that there was a lot of breakdowns in communication, and there wasn't a lot of confidence. The coach and the player, Baker Mayfield, lost confidence in themselves, and they lost confidence in each other. Okay. And that has everything to do with the coach and the system. And if you don't have a coach that is a good leader, does not know how to lead a group of talented football players, you're going to have really poor results. And that's what happened with the Browns. I think we all saw what happened that season. And then we remarkably got this coach named Kevin Stefanski. And in my article, I'll admit, like most of you who, when you heard that Kevin Stefanski got hired by the Browns, I was not the only one who went, oh my God, what are they doing again? This is just terrible. I had that knee-jerk reaction. If you didn't, and I'm shocked. I would be shocked because we've gone through 20 years of just awful football as a Browns fan. And none of you, nor did I, think that Kevin Stefanski, who had never coached an NFL team, would have that much success. But the key to Stefanski and what he's doing is how he is able to communicate, and the players are listening to him and buying into his system. That is huge, huge. You can't just make that up. It's just part of what Stefanski's all about. And if you really go back and do your research on Stefanski, he has a history of just having a lot of success wherever he's been, from even the time when he was in high school himself and college. He's a smart cookie. He understands the game. He understands the X's and O's, and he understands how to reach a player and communicate with everybody around him. And he helps facilitate all of that in a way that everyone feels comfortable. And when you get that, you get a successful football program. And folks, the Browns are not going anywhere. The Browns are going to be there for a long time. If they can tie Stefanski up for the next 5 to 8 years, look for the Browns to be right up there. This is a good time. Reminds me of those years back in the late 80s, early 90s with Marty Schottenheimer, Bernie Kosar. The stats that Baker is doing right now are off the charts. We talked a little bit about the Mount Rushmore of great Browns quarterbacks in one of my recent articles for clevelandsportstalk.com. And I ended up, we talked about Otto Graham, the great Otto Graham, Bernie Kosar, Brian Sipe, and Baker Mayfield. Now, Baker Mayfield is currently playing, but you want to go back and look at some stats. Go look back at what Baker has done over the last 3 years. His stats are right up there with an elite group in the NFL historically. People like Peyton Manning, people like Dan Marino. That's it, folks. There aren't too many other people, too many other quarterbacks currently that have a stat line throwing 75 touchdowns right now after 3 seasons. That's significant. And I don't look for Baker to regress. If he does, I would be shocked. So now I did change my tune a little bit after we talked about the Mount Rushmore of great quarterbacks. Today, I wrote an updated article about the pit of despair of horrible Browns quarterbacks in a recent history. I didn't go back beyond the 1999 season before that, but I focused on 4 quarterbacks that were really lousy. Now, we've had a lot of lousy quarterbacks, 29 quarterbacks, I think, since 99. Is it 29? Let me know if I'm right or wrong on that. But of those 29, I brought it down to 4 different quarterbacks. Thank God we have Baker Mayfield now. Guys, think about that. We have Baker Mayfield as our quarterback. We haven't had a quarterback that's been successful and completed and been part of an organization for 3 years now. If you go back over the last, 29 season or 29 quarterbacks, none of these quarterbacks managed more than a year, maybe a year and a half. I think Colt McCoy, the former Browns quarterback that was drafted, I think back in 2010, he managed to get through maybe 2 seasons with the Browns. I'll have to double check on that. Brady Quinn, another former Browns draft pick, he lasted a little bit longer too. But really, most of these 29 other quarterbacks managed, 4 or 5 games here, 3 or 4 games here. Players like Jason Campbell, Robert Griffith III, Jeff Garcia, Jake Delhomme, Josh McCown. The list goes on. I'm running out of names here. Just a bazillion. Brian Hoyer. So here are my 4 pit of despair quarterbacks that are the worst in Browns history, in my opinion, at this point. Now, we'll start with an older gentleman who was actually drafted when he was 28 years old out of Oklahoma State. And the reason he was 28, it was because he tried his hand at professional baseball for a while. And I think he should have stayed with baseball. That's none other than Brandon Weeden. Weeden came out of Oklahoma State. He was 28 years old, going to be 29, I think, that season that he played for the Browns back in, would it have been 2000? Was it 2015? Yeah, 2015. I'm looking at my notes over here. No, actually, it was before that. It was 2012. And his claim to fame is that he started out, he was the, his first game he played against the Philadelphia Eagles, prior to the game starting, he actually, in the pregame, they brought out the huge American flag on the Cleveland field. And for some odd reason, he tried running underneath the flag to escape it, but got caught. And that's his claim to fame. That first game, it was just off for him. He got stuck under that flag. He went on to lose the game. He threw 4 interceptions in that game. In 2013, he was still kind of starting games in and out of the lineup. He had injuries. Brian Hoyer was in there quarterbacking too at the time. He came back in for a game against the Detroit Lions. I think Hoyer got a concussion. Weeden was quarterbacking, and the Browns were down a touchdown to the lowly Detroit Lions late in the game. And I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes of the game, they were at midfield, the Browns, where they were driving. And go back and look at this play, but for some reason he was getting run out of the pocket. He underhanded a throw, not an overhanded throw. He underthrew the throw, going away from the players. He basically threw this ball up in the air like you were in a playground when you were in elementary school, jumping up for just a loose ball. And of course, there were 4 Detroit Lion players scattered all around, ready to grab the interception, which they did, which then that sealed the deal and the Browns lost. But I remember that game because I was watching it at the sports bar there in Wichita with my favorite Browns backers, the odds chapter there over at Quincy's Sports Bar and Grill. And I just remember the moans and groans of all of us going, what the hell was that? It was one of the worst moments that I've ever seen a quarterback just, it was a boneheaded mistake. And that's basically Brandon Weeden. So number 2 on my list was Cody Kessler. Now, Cody Kessler came along a little bit later in 2016, and he got drafted by the Browns. He was supposed to be a backup to Robert Griffith III, and I think Josh McCown both. They both were injured that first week in the second week of the season, and so Cody Kessler, who was coming out of USC out there in Southern California, he got kind of thrown into the starting role, and it was not a good thing for him. He didn't have overwhelming numbers that were that atrocious, but the fact is that he started 8 games and he never got a win. Now, he did go on to play in Jacksonville, I think, then the following year. The Browns got rid of him or traded him to them, and he did, I think, register 2 wins in his career. But in Cleveland, he was 0-8. And, you felt like when you watched Cody Kessler back then, he was on the brink of doing some good things. It's just he could never figure out how to actually win a game for the Brownies. And so he was another one on my list. Another third on my list here, it would be the loose cannon, Johnny Football, Johnny Manziel, the cocky son of a gun out of Texas A&M, the former Heisman Trophy winner, who actually is in the news this week with his arrogant, pompous ass talking about how he was making $30,000 a month with boosters and other people that were giving him money when he was at Texas A&M. The guy's just a doofus. It's just a shame. He was a partier. He did all sorts of bad things he should not have been doing when he was in college and when he became a pro with the Browns, and really tanked, and really is one of the worst draft picks by the Browns in their history. He was drafted in 2014 by the Browns. And I will admit, when he was drafted, yes, you folks out there, my friends out there in Kansas will remind me that, yes, I did buy a Johnny Cleveland t-shirt. I wore it proudly after he was drafted and said to everybody, Super Bowl. And boy, were we all wrong completely. Johnny Manziel never learned how to read a playbook. I don't know if he can read. He just a doofus, and he spent all of his time off the field doing inappropriate things and didn't care about football. He came from a rich, spoiled family in Texas and has treated everybody pretty much in his life poorly and continues to do that. And I think he's now in his, how old is he now? 30? No, 29? I'm not even sure if he's 30 yet. But I know a lot of 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds that are a lot more mature than Johnny Manziel. So we were all wrong with that. It was a terrible, horrible pick by the Browns, and he will go down probably in historical purposes for the Cleveland Browns history as just one of the worst draft picks ever. And then finally we have the kid out of Notre Dame, the local kid from Ohio, grew up in Toledo. That's where I grew up, actually. I was born and raised in Toledo until I was 8 years old, the Glass City. And DeShone Kizer out of Notre Dame, grew up in Toledo, Ohio. Unfortunately, again, DeShone Kizer was drafted by the Browns in 2017. By then, the coach then was Hugh Jackson, another moron as a coach. Folks thought that he was some sort of quarterback whisperer when he was coach with the Oakland Raiders. And so when DeShone Kizer got drafted by the Browns, they weren't sure if he would start or not. He was drafted in the second round by the Brownies and actually won the role out was Brock Osweiler, who the Browns had picked up previously from the Denver Broncos. So DeShone Kizer started most of that season. And of course, many of you know, if you're a Browns fan, that season was really, really pathetic. It was the season that we'll never forget because the Browns didn't win a game. They went 0-16. historically would probably be the worst season the Browns in history have ever had. DeShone Kizer is tied to that now forever because he was the quarterback of most of those games. And the season was a bookend for him in a horrible way. It started the season against the dreaded Pittsburgh damn Steelers, where he was sacked 7 times in the opening game. And they continued to lose and lose and lose and lose and lose. Got to the end of the season, and he played against the Pittsburgh Steelers again over in Pittsburgh, where the Steelers sacked him 6 times. And so there you go, a storied career for DeShone Kizer. Now, I will give Kizer some credit. He's still in the NFL. He's a backup currently, I believe, with the Tennessee Titans. And maybe he'll get another game. He did, I think, go over to Green Bay for a little bit and played a couple games, and he might have even started a game or two with the Green Bay Packers. So I'll give him some credit. But when he was in Cleveland, he never won a game. He was 0-15 on his career. And I feel bad for the kid. He seemed like he was a pretty good kid. He just never knew how to win a game. So those are my pit of despair, horrible Browns quarterbacks in recent memory. All right, I'm going to leave you with Did you know? Did you know? A little bit more Browns trivia here. Today, I started in the last few days. I've got a TikTok now, so if you want to follow me on TikTok, follow me at my name, John Suchan, JohnSuchan. We've been putting out some sports, Cleveland sports trivia, little nuggets of greatness, and we only have 95 days until kickoff, folks. 95 days until kickoff, when they're going to battle out there at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, Missouri. By the way, the stadium is in Missouri, not in Kansas. And looking forward to that. You know, I'm flying out there to the game, just really excited about that. And so little news. So on my trivia today, I talked about we're 95 days from kickoff. So Myles Garrett today. Myles Garrett wears number 95, but there are other players that have worn 95 for the Browns that have been pretty good in the past. And one of those players is actually from Wichita, Kansas, where I used to live. In Wichita, there was a player that went to Wichita Northwest High School. I think they were the home of the Grizzlies, and his name was Cameron Wembley. You guys remember him? He was drafted in 2006, and he ended up playing 9 seasons. Many of those, he played his first 4 years in Cleveland. He was drafted by the Browns in 2006. I think he actually holds the record still for most sacks for a rookie season. He had 11 sacks his first year and really was outstanding. He had some injury bug things the following year and the year after that, and just was really not anything close to what he kind of did that first year. There was a lot of disappointing fans who thought that Wembley was what wasn't what we thought he would be. He was picked a number 13, lucky number 13 in the draft that year. But the kid, again, from Wichita, just that kind of the local kid, fun to know that. We were sitting in the sports bar like there, the Quincy's there, with our Browns backers, and we had some folks in our Browns backers group that actually went to high school with Wembley, and so that was kind of a nice connection. And so I've always had a sentimental thing for Wembley in his career, and I think he went from Cleveland to the Oakland Raiders and did pretty well that following year. He did retire after 9 seasons, and I just found this interesting too. He's always had an interest in helping. He loves dogs and pets, and he talks. If you read any of his information, he's in a lot of business. Locally, he has some businesses there in Kansas right now, in the Wichita area. He lives in Florida, I think, now, and runs some businesses there. And one of the businesses he works with is our dogs and supporting the bulldog, the bully dog breed, who's kind of gotten a bad rap over the years, trying to help dogs in that breed survive, kind of a rescue mission. And so he's kind of started that after he retired. I think he retired in 2014, 2015, and he's has all these businesses, but he has a real interest in helping the dog population. So I think that's pretty cool. I would encourage you to do a Google search on him. There's a lot of good material and some nice stories about what he's doing to support the pet population. All right, folks, I hope you all have a very, very good evening. Just excited to be back on the air. We're going to, again, we're on this new platform we're calling District. And the podcast, our Johnny Cleveland podcast will be broadcast through their digital platforms and a website like theclevelandscene.com, where you'll be able to find my podcast and click on it and come and listen to our great takes every week. And look forward to providing you more entertainment this summer. Wife and I and the family are going to be doing lots of little vacations. I'm sure we'll have some great stories to share on upcoming podcasts. Until then, follow us again on Facebook and on Twitter at jclevelandpod. Also follow me. You can follow me on Twitter at my other handle at John Suchan, JOHNSUCHAN. Also on TikTok now. You can follow that as we do our countdown to the NFL, to the Browns kickoff that season. Again, we're on day 95. We're only 95 days. Only 95 days. I mean, come on now. It's 95 days. Oh my God. So anyway, folks, have a great evening. And we will come to you next time. And remember to, yes, keep smiling. Take care.